Jay fans are trying to figure out how Rogers Communications, if you pay your cable bill, why couldn't those guys afford to go out and get David Price? How did David Price get away? And how could a team afford to pay one player $31 million a year? Over 7 years, $217 million. Well, an argument is now being made that perhaps the sports bubble is about to pop. And who might be responsible? Well, if you are moving away from cable, maybe it's you. Because these networks that pay the leagues the big money, think of, how much, Rogers or Bell, which represent TSN or Sportsnet, are paying for the rights to the NHL or to the NFL or to the NBA. Television networks are paying big money. That big money is used to pay the salary of your favorite player. So where and how could it all come crashing down? Could be your fault when you cut your cable. Maybe you're the reason why in the future David Price isn't signed by the Blue Jays. We're joined right now by Dave Maney, who is the founder and the CEO of Deke Digital and a contributor to Forbes and to the Daily Beast. And Dave joins us right now. Dave, thank you very much for your time.
Jim, thank you for inviting me.
So similar numbers, I think, might be argued that here in Canada, the research firm's latest study shows the TV subscribers found that this country's publicly traded broadcasters lost a combined 113,000 subscribers in the first part of this year. Now, those are Canadian numbers, and that means that people are cutting the cable. But in order to kind of make that eye level for Canadians, there is an argument that you're making down in the United States, and that is that ESPN lost 7 million households. And your argument on how that trickles down to the sports bubble about to pop, what is it?
Well, look, here's the brilliant thing about the ESPN business model is that they essentially figured out a way to drill directly into the wallet of every cable subscriber, not just the ones who wanted to watch sports. And cable television providers, operators, and I spent 12 years working in the cable television business. Cable television operators are, for all intents and purposes, monopolists. They have they're, here in the U.S., we have only a very small handful of communities that have more than one operator, so the pricing power is very strong. So what began to happen was that ESPN began to get some marquee sports, from its humble beginnings in Bristol, Connecticut, about 35 years ago, and began to pick up a few, programs here and there, and then, essentially went back to those cable operators and said, can we get a price increase from you? Can you, the cable operator, pay us a little more at wholesale for our signals? And what they found was the cable operators were relatively willing to do that, and essentially they began to, it became by far and away down here in the States, ESPN is by far and away the most expensive single cable channel. Of course, you never get a bill here in the States, just as up there you don't for TSN. You don't get a bill down here for ESPN. You get a cable bill, an overall cable bill. But it is, the numbers are one. My old boss was a pioneer in the cable industry, and in fact was the founding president of the Yankee Entertainment and Sports Team, the New York Yankees Sports Network. His estimate that he gave over the summer was that consumers in the States are paying $35 in a big city like New York, paying $35 to $40 per month just for sports programs. Now, when you start to kind of delaminate, when you start to take apart the cable offering, which is what the cord cutting, the unbundling, the over-the-top, the broadband users are doing down here with Netflix and Roku boxes and all of these different individual Amazon Prime Video, all the services that are available to us. They're starting to pick and choose what they want. And when you start to examine the number of people that are willing to pay $35 or $40 a month for sports programming, you suddenly find that there's this unsustainable, almost kind of death spiral that could start to happen. I'm not arguing that professional sports is not a remarkable and amazingly popular thing. What I'm arguing is that there is a bubble in its pricing and in its valuation that has been supported by a business model, bundled cable, which is no longer viable.
They're going to have a pick and pay system coming here in the new year here in Canada where you'd be able to go a la carte and pick these things. So, well, then take me through what happens. So your argument is here in Canada, an ESPN or a Sportsnet that someone wants. And think of it, folks. I mean, I think for a lot of people, the only reason you're keeping your cable, the argument would be you want local news, which maybe you could get online right now through Twitter, but how are you going to watch your Blue Jays? So maybe you're keeping cable for that. But if people aren't, how does that math and your argument about the sports bubble trickle down?
So, well, here in the States, the estimate is that ESPN right now charges cable operators about $6, in that neighborhood, and it depends on the size of the cable operator, but it's about $6 per household per month for ESPN, that the cable operator pays to ESPN. So if he's serving it to 1 million subscribers here, I'm sitting here in the Denver metropolitan area in Colorado. If there's 1 million subscribers here getting it, that means the Denver cable operator is paying ESPN $6 million per month for those 1 million households, right? And the problem is they've done surveys. Certain market research firms have done surveys here asking American consumers, how many of you would if you had to pay on a standalone basis for sports, and they gave them an estimate of about $20 a month, how many people would pay that? And the answer came back at about 20 to 25% of American consumers would. So suddenly you find that their revenue, that means if only about 200,000 of those million households would pay, and to get to $6 million a month, you suddenly find they've got to charge $30 a month just for ESPN to get the same revenue, and that's at wholesale.
Yeah.
That's not at retail.
So if you
do the math, it's some number that's clearly not sustainable. So to your question of what happens then, what's been happening is these cable networks have been using this extraordinary revenue power to go out and bid ever higher numbers for sports programming rights. And what starts to happen is one of these rounds, right? These contracts come up every few years for renewal, and you always read the story about here was the NHL signed the giant new deal, obviously last year with Rogers in Canada. The next time that deal comes up, which is I don't remember how long the deal was for. The next time it comes up, I can almost guarantee you that revenue, that model will have broken down so badly that there will be a precipitous drop in what the NHL receives for those.
Okay, so I'm running out of time. They want us, I guess, in the future to no longer watch it, maybe on cable, maybe we're watching it on our smartphone or our tablet. Is that a way that pricing could still be able to afford these huge deals for television rights and for salaries?
No, I think all parts of that bubble will deflate, meaning player salaries as well. So it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next year, but you will see it. I guarantee you that with all of these cable networks under pressure, you'll see the rights deals go under pressure. You'll see the franchises and the ownership come under pressure, and then you'll see the player salaries come the same way. It's simply.
And
like
what happens when the TV company owns the team because it helps them provide programming?
I don't think it's any different. It's whether it's the internal transfer pricing they use or whether it's real dollars changing hands. The effect is the same. When the air is out of the balloon.
Dave, it's really interesting piece. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Jim. Nice talking to you.
Dave Maney is the founder and the CEO of Deke Communications and a contributor to Forbes and the Daily Beast. In the news, shocking new gun violence numbers here in Toronto. That coming up in 5 minutes.